Hello everyone, glad to be back with you for this new episode. Thank you for your presence and your kind support. Today, as an introduction, let's begin by using our imagination. Imagine two gardens, same climate, same sunlight, and the same amounts of rain and water. After a few years, one of the gardens is thriving. The other garden can barely produce anything at all. If you look more closely, and this is where the discovery becomes interesting, you realize that the problem is not the plants. The problem is the environment. That is also what modern psychology has discovered about human growth. Most of us spend our energy trying to improve the plant. We work on our discipline, our methods, our resilience. Very few of us ever examine the garden itself. Welcome to the Forge Conversations. I'm Alain Coadou. I study what happens when human beings remain under pressure for too long. The invisible erosion that occurs before anyone, including the person themselves, notices something has gone wrong. In these episodes, we explore the Forge framework, a 5-part architecture for leaders navigating the territory I call drift, the long, quiet period when performance remains externally intact while something essential fragments underneath. In our previous episodes, we explored focus, the recovery of attentional clarity when everything has begun competing at the same volume. Overcome, the work of identifying what we carry and developing the discernment to know what still belongs to us. And reinvent, the deliberate process of updating the internal operating system through which a leader thinks, regulates, decides, and defines success itself. Today we enter the 4th movement, the letter G, as in grow. I want to begin with a question that I find genuinely important. Why do some people continue to grow for years while others stagnate despite their experience, their intelligence, and their success? The answer, I believe, has very little to do with willpower. Today, we are going to examine the garden. At the beginning of a career, everything is about learning. You experiment, you fail, you adjust, you discover capabilities you didn't know you had. Every new responsibility is a form of unexplored territory. After some time, something may change. Results arrive, reputation builds, expectations settle in, and progressively, without anyone really noticing, exploration becomes execution. Learning becomes expertise, curiosity becomes control. The leader keeps performing, often brilliantly, but they are growing less. It is a mechanism that is almost invisible. There is no clear break, no triggering event. It is just a slow substitution. Growth is quietly replaced by performance. I heard a leader saying this: I succeed at everything I take on, but at the same time, I feel like I am slowly shrinking. It was not a lack of willpower or a lack of discipline. The conditions for his growth had progressively deteriorated, and no one, not him, not his organization, had truly noticed. This idea that environment shapes growth more than effort wasn't just a poetic observation. In the 1970s, a psychologist named Edward Deci set out to test it. He gave participants a puzzle to solve, a metal object, pieces that fit together, nothing spectacular. The participants, on their own, found it interesting. They even came back to it during breaks and talked about it. Then Deci introduced a change. He paid them for each puzzle they completed. As you can imagine, their engagement went up. Then he removed the reward. Something unexpected happened then. Participants engaged less with the puzzle than they had engaged before the reward was introduced. The introduction of an external motivation had not reinforced the internal motivation of the participants. It had partially replaced it. This is what Deci would later call the over-justification effect. External rewards can sometimes replace intrinsic motivation. Together with his colleague Richard Ryan, he spent the following decades refining this discovery, and the result became one of the most robust theories in contemporary psychology, self-determination theory. Its central premise is simple. Human beings have a natural and deep tendency to develop, to learn, to progress, and to contribute. That tendency does not need to be created. It needs to be nourished. Deci and Ryan's work revealed 3 pillars that sustain intrinsic motivation. Let's explore each one, because they're the key to understanding your own garden. Those 3 needs are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. In the garden, we could say they are the light, the nutrients, and the ecosystem. Autonomy is the light of the garden. Without light, nothing grows. It doesn't matter how rich the soil is. It doesn't matter how much water you provide. But here, and this is an important distinction, autonomy does not mean total independence. It does not mean doing whatever you want, whenever you want, without constraint. It means feeling that your actions are aligned with your real values and your real choices, that you are the author of what you do, even within constraints. A regional director who spends his week validating reports he never asked for may have authority. He may even have a large team, but he may feel less autonomous than a junior employee building something meaningful for the first time. And differently, a leader with very little formal latitude can act with genuine psychological autonomy because they know why they do what they do, because their actions carry a meaning that belongs to them. When autonomy is absent, the symptoms are recognizable. A chronic fatigue that rest does not relieve, a quiet cynicism that settles in layer by layer, a sense of being trapped by a role, a system, or a trajectory that no longer feels like your own. And all of this can happen with a high salary, with a title that commands respect, with results that no one questions. Think about the last strategic decision you were part of. Did you shape it or did you ratify it? There is a difference between being consulted and being the author. Most senior leaders spend years being consulted while believing they are choosing. The question to sit with is this one. Am I still choosing, or am I simply reacting to what is expected of me? The second need is competence. In the garden, that would be the nutrients. In a garden, even with full sunlight, a plant without nutrients will eventually exhaust itself. It maintains an appearance, and it may still produce fruits, but it is drawing on its reserves without ever replenishing them. The need for competence is not about the level of expertise you have already reached. It is about movement. We need to feel that we are still learning, still progressing, that our mastery is developing in one direction or another. This can be a trap, even for experienced leaders, and no one points that out to them. After years of practice, they have become experts. They know their domain, they manage, they oversee, they control, but they have stopped developing. 10 years ago, every week contained something new. Today, many leaders can predict almost every meeting before it starts. There is a fundamental difference between managing what you already master and learning what you do not master yet. The first is reassuring, the second is uncomfortable. But it is the learning that nourishes. Performance looks at what you produce. Growth looks at what you are becoming. In a world changing as fast as ours, a leader who stops growing gradually becomes a less and less relevant version of himself. He may continue to excel at competencies, but their value is quietly eroding. When did you last sit in a meeting and genuinely not know the answer? Not because you were underprepared, but because the question was new to you. If you cannot remember, that is worth noticing. The third need is relatedness. The ecosystem in the garden? No plant truly grows alone. Even the most resilient species depends on an invisible network. Fungi, bacteria, insects, underground interactions that the eye cannot see. When the ecosystem deteriorates, the plant weakens even when everything appears normal on the surface. Relatedness, in the sense Daisy and Ryan use the term, is the need for belonging, the need for authentic human connection, to feel known, not just recognized for what you produce, but known for who you are. Here, hierarchical success plays a cruel trick. The higher the level, the less sincere the feedback. The more interactions become transactional, the more conversations are filtered through stakes, positions, and precautions. The leader finds himself surrounded by people and profoundly alone. Not alone for lack of context, alone for lack of conversations that genuinely circulate something real, an uncomfortable idea, a true doubt, or an emotion that doesn't need to be managed before it can be expressed. And without that quality of connection, growth slows, not because the leader lacks willpower, but because human growth needs to be witnessed to consolidate. It needs to be named. It needs a presence that reflects back something real. Think about your last 5 face-to-face meetings. How many of them were status updates? How many were conversations where something real was exchanged? A doubt, a difficulty, a genuine question? The ratio tells you something about the ecosystem you are operating in. Let's return for a moment to the journey we have been traveling together. In focus, we learn to see again, to recover clarity where overload had blurred everything. In overcome, we learn to set down what weighs without serving, the accumulated burdens, the protective mechanisms that had become prisons. In reinvent, we undertook the reconstruction, not a surface repair, a genuine reconfiguration of the relationship to self, to role, to action. Grow marks a turning point. Until now, the work was essentially about correcting, lightening, rebuilding. We could say it was the work of a physician, fixing what's broken, but grow is the work of a gardener. The difference between the two is important. The physician treats what is not working. The gardener creates the conditions for something living to unfold. The gardener does not make plants grow. No one can force growth. What they can do, what they do, is examine the environment with care, make sure the light reaches the plants, that the soil is well fed, so that the ecosystem is alive, and then they trust what wants to grow. The gardener's discipline is not about the plant. It is about not disturbing the conditions that make growth possible. That is exactly what grow represents in the Forge model. We are not talking about an additional effort or a new performance to achieve. We are talking about redirecting attention toward the conditions. Before we close, take a moment, not to analyze, just to notice where you are right now in each of these 3 dimensions. How present is autonomy in your daily work? Do your actions still carry a meaning that belongs to you? How alive is your competence? Are you still being extended, or are you mainly managing what you already know? And how nourishing are your relationships? Is there someone in your life who still sees you as a person, not a function? And if I had to leave you with one thing to carry from this episode, 3 questions as the takeaway. Before we close, I'd like you to pause for a moment, grab a pen, ask yourself, how much of what you do today did you actually choose? Or did you simply inherit it from expectations that were never yours? What are you learning right now that genuinely stretches you, not refines you, stretches you? And who in your life still sees you as a person, not a function? Autonomy, competence, relatedness, not a checklist. A daily reading of your environment. Because growth does not ask for more effort. It asks for more honesty about the conditions you are living in. Most people believe that growth is a matter of discipline. Work harder, read more, structure your time better, build stronger habits. The research suggests something different, which I find deeper. Growth is, above all, a matter of conditions. When autonomy is present, when you are genuinely the author of what you do, something awakens. When competence continues to develop. When you are still learning, not just refining what you already know, something strengthens. When relationships truly nourish belonging. When you exist for someone else as more than a function, something takes root. In those conditions, the human being naturally moves toward development, not because they are pushed, not because they are incentivized, because it is their deepest nature. In the language of Forge, focus helps us see, overcome helps us lighten, reinvent helps us rebuild, grow helps us cultivate. Because after repair, growth is the natural next step. And as in any living garden, growth does not emerge from pressure. Perhaps growth was never something that needed to be forced. Perhaps growth was waiting for the conditions to return. And perhaps the next stage of your development has less to do with becoming someone else, and more to do with creating the environment in which you can continue becoming yourself. In the next episode, we'll explore the final letter of Forge, Excel. Because a garden doesn't just grow, it thrives. And thriving, as we'll see, has nothing to do with fear. Excel is when performance stops being a response to threat and becomes the natural expression of who you have become. I'm Alain Coadou. I created The Forge because I believe that what happens before breakdown deserves as much attention as breakdown itself. That drift is not a weakness. It is what pressure does to human beings over time. And I believe that the ability to recognize it early and to navigate it with care carries something rare. The ability to sustain not just performance, but ourselves. If you recognized something of yourself in what we explored today, perhaps that is where the real work starts. And if you would like to explore what recalibration might look like in your own context, you will find me at alaincoadou.com. This was the Forge Conversations. Thank you for listening.